In our first episode, we covered Demogorgon, the mightiest of all demons. But in Dungeons & Dragons, there is another kind of fiend separate from demonkind: devils. Though equally wicked and powerful as their demonic counterparts, devils are not simple engines of destruction and chaos. Native denizens of the Nine Hells, devils are the embodiment of evil melded with law. Devils personify tyranny, with a totalitarian society dedicated to the domination of mortal life. The shadow of the Nine Hells of Beator extends far across the multiverse. Devils understand the failings that plague mortals, and they use that knowledge to lead mortals into temptation and darkness, turning creatures into slaves to their own corruption. They love to strike bargains with mortals seeking to gain some benefit or prize, but any making such a bargain must be wary. Devils are exceedingly crafty negotiators and positively ruthless at enforcing the terms of an agreement. To own a creature's soul is to have absolute control over that creature, and most devils accept no other currency in exchange for their fiendish power and boons they can provide. But as their lawful nature demands, devils adhere to a strict hierarchy, obeying even when they envy or dislike their superiors, knowing that their obedience will be rewarded. The Nine Hells depends on this strict, unswerving loyalty, without which they would become as anarchic and chaotic as the abyss. The lesser devils obey the mighty and powerful greater devils, who in turn answer to the archdukes of Beator, 8 unique fiends as powerful as demon lords that rule over their own layer of the Nine Hells. But ultimately, there is only one who commands all devil kind, one who overlords even the 8 archdukes, and reigns as the undisputed master of the Nine Hells. So much so, even the gods that call that plane their home pay him nothing but respect and deference. His name is Asmodeus, the Lord of Flies, the Archfiend, the Dark Lord of Nessus, the supreme master of the Nine Hells. Asmodeus is an unmatched strategist and orator. He is a soft-spoken, articulate, chillingly reasonable fiend who is confident in his status as one of the multiverse's most powerful entities. Even when surprised, he reacts with supreme poise, as if he were already 3 steps ahead of his adversaries, which he almost always is. If Asmodeus were any less capable, his arrogance would have led to his undoing long ago. Yet still he sits atop his throne, having thwarted every conspiracy mounted against him. It is said that he once walked into the lair of one of his enemies in Mount Celestia and survived using nothing more than his words and his wits. Even his most ardent enemies grudgingly admit that his skill and competence are unparalleled. Asmodeus stands tall and lithe of frame, just over 13 feet tall, with lustrous dark red skin and dark black hair. He is handsome in the same way that a thunderstorm is beautiful, fierce and striking to behold. His red eyes shine with the power of hell, and his head is crowned with a pair of small dark red horns. He dresses in finery of red and black. A single garment of his might cost what an entire nation spends in a year. And of course he is never without his ruby rod, a 4-foot rod of solid ruby with an opaline tip, fashioned to resemble a clawed fist clutching a skull. It has a jagged bottom, covered with the names of good deities and celestials, all spelled in reverse and sullied with black blood. This ornate piece of unparalleled jeweled finery is an artifact of vast magical power. Beneath his resplendent robes, Asmodeus hides grievous half-healed wounds that erupt from his skin. These injuries are remnants of an incident millennia past, when the Dark Lord was flung from the heavens by all the united powers of good. He fell to the lower plane, spiraling through rock and soil. The protesting earth tore his flesh, opening scores of gaping wounds. Still he fell, until he could fall no further. The point where he finally stopped, the deepest part of hell, the pit. The wounds that Asmodeus suffered in this dramatic fall have never healed, though he manages to appear blithely unperturbed by his injuries. They continuously weep blood every day, and every drop that falls to the ground sprouts into a powerful pit fiend, loyal to the Lord of the Nine. The machinations of Asmodeus are inscrutable to outside observers, but that is merely due to their short-sighted and dim-witted view. Asmodeus's manipulations are labyrinthine and insidious. They work on a grand scale, although when it suits his needs, he's willing to focus his attention on the status of a lowly mortal soul. Ultimately, the Lord of Lies has one preeminent ambition: to rule the cosmos. Under his watch, Asmodeus believes, the universe would reach a pristine, perfect state, with every living creature assigned a place in the Infernal hierarchy. Wars would end, for all would be conquered. Every creature would have a purpose to fulfill that he designated. The universe would be a utopia, at least as Asmodeus views such things. Of course, as he sees it, Asmodeus is the only being with the charisma, strength, and insight necessary to shepherd in this ideal future. He may not be wrong. His rivals are inferiors who, if left to their own devices, would turn the cosmos into a demon-infested maelstrom. The powers of good are sentimental fools, too delicate and soft to do what must be done. In his mind, the Lord of the Nine has been chosen by the universe to protect it from annihilation. Indeed, even his archdukes must be guided firmly by his hand. During the event called the Reckoning of Hell, multiple archdukes attempted a coup to usurp the Lord of Lies from his throne, but in the end, Asmodeus demonstrated that he could take on virtually every other archdevil in hell and arise triumphant and unscathed when the smoke cleared. His will alone dictates who rules the various layers of hell. Once a year, he gathers the archdevils together in his home in Nessus, a fortress called Malsheen, to attend him, and none have ever refused this call. Asmodeus is an entity with power nearly without limit. As the unquestioned master of Beator, he can work nearly any magic within its boundaries as an act of will. He can alter the forms of the other archdukes at will, who I will remind you are on par with the likes of demon lords, even if he might not be able to slay them with such ease. He can even reach into other realms so long as they are uncontested by other major powers and reshape them with his merest thought. He has slain even gods, albeit minor ones, and taken their divine domains, and now he enjoys the status of a greater deity, atop his already amassed power as the greatest of devil kind. The Lord of Nessus enjoys complete political supremacy. He has his archdukes right where he wants them, scared and anxious to please, and his grip over the nine hells has never been stronger. It is lucky for the entire cosmos that Asmodeus and his devils, in all their might and power, are locked in an eternal blood war with the demons of the abyss. Recognizing each other as their mutual greatest threat, the forces of lawful and chaotic evil vie to destroy each other before turning toward the upper planes for conquest. Indeed, the wise have surmised that were one side to win, all the powers of good would not stand a chance against the victor. Unlike the other lords of the Nine, Asmodeus has no quota of souls to fill. Any soul recruited by any denizen of the Nine Hells is also pledged in his name, and a cult dedicated to any other devil is also by default dedicated to him. Because he doesn't need to spend his time courting mortals, he concentrates instead on manipulating demigods and beings of similar station. Occasionally, he lures such a being into a contract and adds a new, unique devil to the ranks of the Hells. Though undisputedly powerful, it is his cunning and not his strength that has led to his most impressive feats, many of which have altered the history of the entire cosmos and become legend to any who dwell among the outer planes, one of which tells the story of his origin and the Pact Primeval. Near the beginning of time, the gods of law and good made beautiful winged warriors to serve them and wield their divine magic against the demons of evil and chaos. These glorious beings were called angels, and the bravest, fiercest, and most powerful of the angels was none other than Asmodeus. He slew more demons than any other of his kind, but as the eons wore on, Asmodeus and the members of his magnificent and terrible company began to take on some of their enemies' traits, so as to fight them more effectively. Gradually, their beauty turned to ugliness, and the deities and other angels began to fear them. Thus, the inhabitants of the celestial realms petitioned the great gods to banish Asmodeus and the most fearsome of his avenging angels. So Asmodeus was put on trial before the gods of good and law, but the darkest of the angels responded readily to the charges, reading from the great tablets of law that he had helped carve. He argued that the first duty of law is to destroy chaos, and that he had performed this duty better than any other. The gods agreed, but argued that he and his company had poisoned themselves in the process. Asmodeus smiled, and the smoke of 1,000 battlefields rose from his lips. He pointed out that they should know better than any that war is a dirty business, that he and his company blackened themselves so that they could remain golden. They had upheld the laws, not broken them, and therefore could not be cast out. Great was the gods' consternation when they could find no counters in their tablets of law to Asmodeus' arguments. The Dark Angel knew the laws better than they did, and could wield their clauses like a knife. With the passage of time, Asmodeus and his warband grew ever more alarming in aspect. Fangs jutted from their mouths, their tongues grew forked, and they wreathed their bodies in mantles of fire. The deities built new citadels to escape them, but Asmodeus and his followers penetrated these as well. They sued the gods under their own laws, demanding full access to all the privileges accorded champions of order. The deities were distressed but could find no lawful way to stop them, so the gods retreated to their great project, the creation of mortals, and of the verdant worlds for those favored beings to live on. And to ensure the safety of their new project, the gods created barriers on the material plane to keep demons at bay. They erected walls, threw up ranges of mountains, covered portions of their worlds with icy wastes, and buried others under vast oceans. But in time, the gods made a horrifying discovery. The mortals they had created, their pride and joy, immediately set to work tearing down these barriers. They scaled walls, climbed mountains, traversed glaciers, and in doing this, they let the demons back in. And the demons ran riot, destroying one earthly paradise after another. The gods were angry, but also confused. Why have they done this? The gods lamented. They had created these barriers to protect them. Why did they insist on breaking through them? The gods wailed and lamented until Asmodeus came to them with an answer. He informed them that mortals had taken these actions because they had been given minds of their own.
They are curious creatures, these mortals, and the demons have promised them freedom. Soon they will learn that the liberty dangled before them is that of absolute anarchy, and that in a demonic realm they are only free to be destroyed. But by then, it will be too late for them.
When the gods realized the truth of the Dark Angel's words, they were downcast, but Asmodeus claimed to have a solution. He surmised the problem was the law of the gods was one of voluntary obedience. There was no established punishment for transgression, and retribution is the basis of all law.
When laws are broken, the wrongdoers must be made to suffer as a warning to others. Thus mortals can choose between the paradise of rightful action and the torment of wickedness.
Asmodeus' logic had no flaw, and his words held power. On that day, the deities began to see that law and chaos were not the only principles in the universe. Good and evil were natural forces in the cosmos as well. So the deities handed down their new laws and sent their clerics through mortal lands to announce that the punishment for sin would be torment. The gods were pleased with this arrangement. They truly thought that everyone would obey and no one would actually be punished. But as mortals died, some souls trickled into the celestial planes who bore the stink of transgression. Asmodeus, aided by Despater and Mephistopheles and others of his dark brigade, set about their lawful punishment. They flayed these sinners and burned them and placed them on racks. The shrieks of the damned reverberated throughout the heavens, and the flowers in the gods' idyllic gardens dripped with blood. The deities of law tried to shut their ears, but they could not abide the horror. So they put Asmodeus in chains and again charged him with high crimes against them. And he argued,
I have merely done what I said I would, under the laws you drafted.
Again, the gods could not deny the truth.
But I have a proposal for you. You wish to see the law upheld. You do not care to witness its ranker consequences. So to preserve your delicate sensibilities, my followers and I will take our project elsewhere. We will build a perfect hell for you. You will gain from its existence, but need never lay eyes upon it. We shall put it there.
And he pointed to an empty land which is now called Beator. The deities agreed, and Asmodeus called for a pact to be signed, to ensure that they, who labored for the gods in a place they would not venture, would continue to carry out their will. This agreement specified the fate of all damned souls. In exchange, the devils were allowed to draw magic from these souls so they might maintain their powers and not need to draw upon the power of the gods of law. And the law deities agreed and signed. The boundaries of hell and the rules for the transmission of wicked souls were established in this pact primeval, and once it was signed, Asmodeus and his dark angels decamped to the bleak and featureless plains of Beator. The deities of virtuous law reveled in their newly purified celestial domains, now free of Asmodeus and his angels' degradation for the first time. But it was soon they discovered a mysterious and alarming drop in the number of souls being transmitted to their various heavens. Upon conferring with their clergy, they realized the devils were corrupting mortals and ensuring their damnation by turning them toward evil. The deities formed a delegation which set off immediately for Beator, and to their surprise, the once featureless plane had been transformed into 9 tiers of monstrous horror and torment. Within its confines, they found countless souls writhing in pain. They saw these souls transformed, first into crawling mindless monsters and eventually into an army of powerful devils. The delegation demanded Asmodeus stand trial for this betrayal, and he did so. Standing before the gods of law and of good, Asmodeus stood proud and defiant. "What have you done?" the gods demanded in horror.
You have granted us the power to harvest souls,
Replied Asmodeus.
To build our hell and gird our might for the tasks set before us, we naturally have to find ways to improve our yield.
The gods seethed with rage at this, and they cried, "It is your job to punish transgressors of evil, not to encourage them." Asmodeus smiled, a venomous smile with his sharpened teeth.
Read the fine print,
was all he replied. The gods had been tricked, and though they could not punish this new Lord of Lies for their own laws and principles, they could hurl him from their home, and hurl him they did. Asmodeus still bears the grievous wounds from that fall to this day, but in the end, he was also victorious. The Archfiend ever seeks to expand his power into the material plane. More souls claimed grant him more divine power, pushing the alignment of the material world bit by bit toward lawful evil. Asmodeus also aims to use this additional divine energy to heal the wounds he suffered when he was cast out of the upper realms. Once he's healed himself, he intends to broker a deal with the demons. He knows it won't last long, but it doesn't have to. Just long enough to tip the direction of eternal warfare from its current law versus chaos axis to an apocalyptic struggle between good and evil. Eventually, Asmodeus plans to demolish the upper realms. Consulting the plans he first drew up 1,000 years ago, he is determined that he's running ahead of schedule. The Dark Lord resides in Nessus, the bottommost layer of the Nine Hells. By design, the place is devoid of activity, since Asmodeus values both his privacy and his safety. The environment is a rocky wasteland, crisscrossed by deep fissures and lacking roads, bridges, and other means of passage. Asmodeus dwells in his great fortress of Malshim, somewhere in the wasteland at the bottom of its deepest pit. Malshim houses Asmodeus' vast army, which swells in number every time he sheds a drop of blood. These forces are restricted for his personal use. Only his most trusted followers and most important advisors know the route to it. He remains inside, relying on messengers and magic to convey his dictates. So that's it. Everything you need to know about Asmodeus. Now you can form a pact with the Dark Lord as a nefarious warlock, tempt your paladin to the dark side with the Lord of Life's seductions, or lead a crusade to the very pits of Nessus itself. And don't forget to tell us in the comments just how it goes.